Hello, everyone. Today we're exploring Main Street Now Mainstream. Find resimercial opportunities in post-pandemic environments. What will the corporate, retail, hospitality, and houses of worship markets require coming out of the pandemic? This hot resimercial topic will highlight opportunities for integrators to upgrade these Main Street facilities with the latest in unified communications and collaboration equipment, surveillance, and more. I'm your session moderator, Ian Bryant, Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at CEDIA. We couldn't put this panel on stage at the show, but it is such an important topic that we're recording this post-show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, I'm with CEDIA. I've been in the industry for about 23 years. Half of that has been in residential, the other half in commercial, corporate, government, military, and education. So I am very excited about this topic, and I am very excited to welcome our panelists who are going to share their experience and give their insights on this topic. So I'll start off with Shawn Hansen, CEO and founder of Logic Integration. Hello, Shawn. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Ian.
And could you tell us a quick snippet about yourself and Logic Integration?
Sure. So Logic Integration was started in 2004 out of Lone Tree, Colorado, which is 20 minutes south of Denver. And we are a 70% commercial integrator and 30% residential.
Awesome. That's great. Our next guest is Heather Sidorowicz. Heather is owner and president of Owner and President, is what it says on my paperwork.
Owner and president.
We all know
Southtown Audio Video.
Thank you, Heather.
No problem.
How are you?
I am pleased as punch to be here with you all. And a little bit about myself. I've been in this industry for, it pains me to say, about 20 years because I don't feel that old. My father started the company back in 1984. I started working with him in early 2000s. He was primarily a hi-fi residential shop at that time. Around the 2010, 11, 12 mark, could start to see the rise of Amazon, Walmart opening down the street, and thought, I don't know if this is sustainable. And we repointed the ship to commercial. I purchased the company outright in 2014. And today we're about 85, and this year probably 90% commercial. And the rest of it we call relationship residential. So I'm going to say light commercial. Today will be about light commercial instead of the word Resi Marshall. It's not a popular terminology out there.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. And next and last, we have Trent Morano, who is Vice President of Systems with Power and Designs Incorporated. Trent, how are you?
Hey, I'm great, Ian. Thanks for having me, and Shawn and Heather. It's good to be with you both. Thanks for having me here. So I'm the Vice President of Systems at Power Design. Power Design is the largest residential electrical contractor in the country. I have the pleasure of overseeing our technology and systems integration team. So, about 42 states, call it a couple hundred people in the field, and about 6,000 guys in the field and growing. So it's pretty exciting. My focus historically has been in convergence, network convergence, think voice, video, data. And really with that, I found a niche in smart buildings, smart connectivity, IoT. And with that, have spent years in the AV industry, and it's been interesting to see how things have come to light with some of the mergers and acquisitions and some of the new products that have come out. So, really looking forward to today's discussion, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you guests, and of course, Ian, with you driving the session. So, thanks.
Thank you, Trent. Well, let's get this discussion started, and the first topic is controversial as always. So, and I agree partially with, what Heather had mentioned of this word resimercial. And so I want to kind of get a response from all three of you and what resimercial means to you, and, what percentage of residential and commercial work are you doing? Shawn, you want to kick that off?
Sure can. So we started doing heavy commercial in actually 2008. So we saw the writing on the wall with the economy and the housing market and the big crash of '09. And my background actually is in commercial. So I'm a musician. I was a touring musician and went to San Jose State University and got my degree in audio engineering, and did residential all the way up to about 2008 very heavily, and really shifted over to commercial. So we've been doing it for quite a long time. We never did drop residential. There was discussions of doing that, but we really never did fully drop it. And we're really glad we didn't, because, both seem to ebbs and flow. But there's definitely a lot of correlation and tie-in. I would say our experience with the commercial has really geared us to a more process-driven company, right? You can't just do napkin CAD. You can't sit at Burger King and design a system real quick and go throw it in. Project management certifications, CTS, CTSD, all those certifications have really, on the commercial side, have allowed us to kind of get our act together, as a $1 or $2 million resi company, and then growing it, past 6 and 7, it changes the game. You got to know what you're doing. So, I hope that answers the question. I can dive a little bit more into project types and product crossovers, but that's kind of my initial response.
Trent, how about yourself? You come from an interesting background with the MDU and electricians, and so what, does Resi Marshall resonate from your perspective, and how does that kind of work into the field that you're playing in?
Yeah, great question. I'll take 2 steps backwards quickly. Kind of started in residential, kind of on single family homes, then went right into commercial, think office space, Class A space, and then over the years, now at Power Design, we're you mentioned MDUs, high rises. It's an interesting term. In fact, I borrowed it from CEDIA here recently, because if you look at MDU high rise, there's definitely a commercial element to it. With some of these unique buildings that have these quote unquote WeWork type feels, if you will, where you're especially given the pandemic and some of the circumstances, yet you still have not single family homes, but condos, of course, that ultimately either is someone's vacation home or is someone's permanent residence of living. So it's really interesting when I think of Resi Marshall, this offering. And then, of course, sometimes on these buildings, depending on the state, you have retail downstairs, and it's kind of this whole work, live, play aspect. And again, with the pandemic that's come forth, it's really driven some of that home. So that's what I think of when I think Resi Marshall. It's interesting. We speak with a lot of manufacturers out there, and of course, with the pandemic, with how hard it's been to find talent, it's begged different types of questions. And I always, I'm sure we'll get to this later, Ian, but I always talk about outcomes. What outcomes are specific to a Resi Marshall project versus a single family home or things like that. And it's something that sometimes a product can't do, so to speak, or can't, the talk track a product can't do, the person can, of course. So these are interesting types of conversations in a timely period, of course, given the state of the union that we're in. But that's what it means to me.
Thank you. And Heather, let us have it. No, I love your perspective.
Hammer home. I think that I don't consider myself a Resi Marshall company. We have turned into a commercial company that has a slice left that has some relationship residential. I do think that does fit in. If I'm the other way around, if I was the opposite and I was an 80% residential company or 85% residential company, and I did that kind of like commercial, that terminology does make some sense. So, hey, I'm already doing this business owner's house, and now he's asked me to go ahead and do his conference room. Or, just those little bit pieces. I'm going to do just a lobby. I'm going to do a conference room here and there, versus the basis of your business being in collaboration, in smart rooms, and really being the one to be watching the market and what's changing. I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, no one's really talking about beamforming microphone technology, or it was just coming out, or AI cameras, which makes me cringe, but I'm going to call them smart cameras. So those are all different pieces of the pie. But yeah, so I think it's a terminology game, but we play that game in this industry all the time, right? Like, what are we called? What do we do? And all those things really come into play.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And yeah, the terminology of smart home, and people, don't want to adopt that. And I think with Trent on this as well, and what you were saying, Heather, is it's really perspective of who, where you are in the industry, whether if you're a primarily commercial company, Resi Marshall may not really make sense to you, as you were saying. And for Trent, Resi Marshall may have a whole nother meaning where it's a residential project in a commercial environment. So I'm glad we have a very collective, a lot of different perspectives here. So I'm really excited about this. All right. So on to our next question. When we put this panel together and I was writing up these questions, we all kind of thought we were starting to see the tail end of the pandemic. It was, right before the Delta variant really hit us hard. And so this question, I'm going to have to tweak it a little bit because it was written as we thought we were coming out. But I'm curious from the group, and we'll start with Trent, as to have you seen now that, and I'd say now that feels like we're starting to come out of the Delta variant from the reports that are in the news right now, as things are starting to trend in the positively direction, not positive cases. But have you started to see an uptick? Are corporations and commercial projects starting to increase now that we're starting to move out of it, or is there still kind of a hesitation to wait to really kickstart a lot of projects because there's so much uncertainty? Trent?
Yeah, great question. I'll say a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than some of my great friends in the single family world. We've seen work not slow down. In fact, we've seen work get busier over the pandemic. But the types of questions that we're getting are way different. So before, it used to be in a Resi Marshall project, and you hit it earlier on the head, where we had, I'll pick on MDUs, where you have a lot of condo buyers, and then you're working on the B2C aspect of this quote unquote smart home tech, but you still have the building technology that needs to support some element of that to make that seamless experience from the parking garage to their unit. We've seen a lot more questions now centered around video for those types of projects, whereas before it was really high-end audio or cameras, and now we're trying to bring video into these condos, which I think that spike is just, I've not seen anything like that, at least on the condo side. Single family side, I've certainly seen that, but that's really been what's telling for us, and it's been, I think it's grown 300 or 400%, and that's staggering. I mean, it's really interesting to see that. So, and keep in mind, we're seeing the same thing happen in California that we are in South Florida, that we are in DC, that we are in Texas, and it's not just kind of one region. So it's really country nationwide. So that's that for us. In addition to the side New York State, where we had the states kind of shut down construction for a period of time. I think there might have been one or two or three states like that. Thing again on the building side, we've seen a steady input there. So hopefully that answers some of your question, Ian.
Yeah. Heather, how are things changing for you and your business as far as steady increases? Are you seeing any changes coming out as the pandemic start to get to the tail end?
So we never really slowed down. We had a few weeks there, when March, so being in New York where everything really was shut down, we took that very first week, we were forced to shut down. We applied for essential status through the state of New York, which we were, because we worked with other essential businesses like hospitals and healthcare agencies, we were granted that essential status. But everybody who could work remote did work remote. That we had some projects that still came through. When this year started, I had like a minute in January and February where I didn't know where this year would go. Well, I'll tell you now that we're in October, it's by far our busiest year what we believe will be double by the end of the year. So it's been really intense, because what people are realizing is, sure, we all thought this might be a short-term thing. We thought, hey, if I don't have video conferencing, that's fine in my business, because by next year, everything's going to go back to normal, which we all know is not to be true. What we learned is, hey, a lot of these employees can be remote and will probably be remote in some capacity or hybrid forever. And that makes for a better work environment. That makes for better culture. So we're seeing that those who were holding out are now like, absolutely, we need this. We need to collaborate as if these people are in the room. And for that reason, we have been, gangbusters. Like, burnout is my issue instead of business. So yeah,
Right.
We expect it to continue as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. It's the bad news, but it's better than the alternative, right?
Yeah, as
Shawn,
like,
is that
my account will say these are good problems to have.
right? Are you seeing the same, Shawn, in your area?
We are. Yeah. So we anticipated there would be a big rush this year when people started coming back to the office. It was definitely delayed. And it seemed like forever to wait for September and October when offices were going to open back up. Downtown Denver had a less than 20% occupancy just about 3 or 4 months ago. And I know, when I was out in New York a couple of months ago, it was very strange to see empty office buildings, right? I mean, so many people were working from home, and then the ones who worked from home ended up either moving far away from their original office or even moving out of state. And then they went to go back to their original job, and then they can't afford the housing. And it's just a huge mess. But anyways, we have seen a lot of previous clients, especially on the commercial side, come back into the office and discover that all of a sudden they don't have capabilities for Zoom and Teams and all these rooms that they used to meet in all the time. And, consumer awareness is high with what we used, right? So there was quite the mad rush to try and implement and upgrade those rooms. Now, while we were in the thick of COVID, we did have some companies who, while all the employees were out of the office, they actually did invest in the technology, and they planned. And it was so nice, right? To sit down and have a plan and figure out what rooms they wanted to do and what they wanted to do and take their time and do it right. So we implemented a lot of that while everybody was out of the office, which was nice. But, service has been really big for us, service, reoccurring revenue. And, we're personally trying to grow our company to a 20-25% reoccurring revenue services-based business, right? Because products, that world is changing quickly with Amazon and many others. And now we have the product shortage too, right?
Yeah, that you can't get any of the products. So if they order today, it's like, well, installed in January.
Yeah, we typically carry around 40, 50 live projects at various stages, and now we're at almost 90. So we have 90 projects that we cannot complete, and 90 projects that have 10, 15, 20% retainers out there, even some on net 60, net 30 terms where you can't finish a job. And our warehouse is full too.
And that's that's not like residential where it's generally a convenience factor. We're talking businesses who need to operate and have meetings. And so that definitely puts a lot of stress on the integrators, on you all that are trying to get your clients up and running so that they can operate at normal capacity. So absolutely. Heather, jump back to you real quick. I know that you do a lot of conferences, huddle spaces, meeting rooms. I did a lot of those when I was in the industry, and I noticed as I was like finishing up the CDA headquarters, and then especially really when the pandemic was in full flux, Crestron was putting a lot of information out about hands-free things. And so I was curious, are you seeing an increase as these businesses are updating all of their conference rooms and meeting spaces in hands-free technology? For instance, having room scheduling systems that automatically will start a meeting when they sense occupancy, or BYOD solutions that will turn on the systems when someone connects to wirelessly. I know there's lots of different options, but is hands-free taking off, or are some of these companies just kind of going back to traditional plug your HDMI cable in, plug your laptop in, or built-in solutions?
So I think that what we see in the news and what is in actual happening in the wild are very different. So we are not getting those types of requests to say, like, this room needs to be completely hands-free. Some of that stuff is okay. We're going to get an interactive board. We're going to order some extra pens so we can wash them. And bring your own device is obviously a huge piece of the story. So things like Crestron's Air Media, or, there's a bunch of them out there, Immersive, Barco. Those offer abilities to, I have my own device, I can connect wirelessly, and we can have that presentation. We see more of that, but I don't think that since the pandemic has started, I've had one client ask me specifically, like, this needs to be a no-touch room. Instead, it has been, oh, our conference room that fit 12 can fit 5. So how do I have this meeting with the other 5? And Bob is a quiet talker and he needs to be heard. So what do we do for that? So those are the kind of questions or problems we're trying to solve. And they've done some studies now too to find out that most people aren't picking it up from touch screens where they're pressing from one input to another. So yeah, we're not actually getting a lot of like, oh, this must work all on its own.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. I know there was a big change, as you mentioned, as people found out that it was more about the circulating air than it was the actual surfaces themselves. Trent, over to you. Going back to MDUs, and I had a thought. I owned a home for almost 15 years. I sold it so I could transition to getting out west, and for a couple of years I lived in apartments, and they were brand new apartments in the Indianapolis area, and I was really surprised that there was no technology at all inside of these spaces. They were still wiring them with just basic Cat 5e and some RG6, no access points, no nothing. And so I was curious, why a developer might not invest into some technology into like condos or apartments. And then, do you see that maybe changing? We had talked about on a pre-call that you and I had about maybe a subscription-based service that's a trend that's happening. Could you kind of touch on that a little bit for us?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I think I'll start with, on the developer front, I think it really, this goes back to understanding your client and understanding, how buildings are built, why they're built, how people make money. So I'll start with the developer for a second. Not every apartment or every apartment building is created equal. A lot of developers, there's a difference between long-term holds where they're retaining the asset and short-term holds where they're flipping it. And so, I think that immediately right there will drive a decision where you might see limited technology invested in said apartment, right? So I know that's renters don't really care, but I think that certainly is an element that as we're working with developers, we need to be mindful of, because that immediately drives the whole pro forma discussion from a technology perspective with said developer. So I'll tell you, we see it all the time. Apartments are a hot one for power design. So it's a baby of ours. And so, I'll tell you what we're seeing a lot of right now is, I'm careful to call it smart apartment tech, but I'll kind of hang this carrot with you. We're seeing these developers, even the short-term guys, they're wanting to differentiate their asset. And so one of the things that they're starting with are, something that's very easy is these motorized window treatments. They're like, hey, this is an easy win. How can we do that? And by the way, if we do something like that, is there some form of, and I'll call it brain, that we can allow or enable our renter to do something with, right? Whatever that might be. Now, where that conversation has gone from in those infancy stages has been, what does that property management system look like? Again, at the developer level, who's kind of managing, what system is that? A, and B, we talk about subscription. I think you and I talked about this in our pre-call. Is there some way to turn on and turn off feature sets for our next generation of renter, whether that be with a door lock, temperature control and shades? And those are the discussions that we're actively in at the moment. It's interesting because if you know a thing or two about network architecture, and of course we're big fans of some of the big OEMs that have already been discussed out there. These conversations take time. Some of these have integratable touch points with KPIs. Some of them don't. So fun conversations, very delicate, because you got to make sure the experience is still there, and especially if you're going to promise someone a subscription service, and it's still, I think it's still developing, if you will, right? So, but nonetheless, Ian, these are conversations that are active, and I know we're knee deep in at the moment.
So it sounds like we're in that area. It's similar to residential, where we really have a lot of work to develop relationships with the design build community.
Depending on how you skin that cat, yes. I'll share. I think the easy win in apartments right now that we're seeing is, and again, this is what I call the low bid stuff, right? You have one app for your parking system, one app for your mailroom, one app for your pool area, one app for your apartment, and it's a disaster. And the question becomes, how do you make it seamless from parking garage to sofa and back out? And so we're starting to see some low-hanging fruit, again, on the base building systems to make that experience great. The question is the base building system, how does that tie into your apartment or condo? And how do you increase the experience there? And that it's doable. Sometimes there's a little bit of a premium there on for the developer and or the unifier, depending on whose budget goes where, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Shawn, what are you seeing with the SMB retail and restaurant markets? Are they investing in, the new technology as businesses starting to increase and come back? I know that's a much different environment than the large corporation projects that have a lot of money to spend on upgrades and technology. How about these smaller the SMBs and the retail markets?
Well, as far as the restaurant and bar, it's interesting. We've seen some major cutbacks. We actually we try not to pursue a lot of restaurant and bar. We use a CRM and we categorize all our sales and leads and all that. And we basically have it in, we had 10 buckets that we went after, or, corporate K through 12, higher ed, health and wellness. And we kind of categorized everything. And that was one of the categories that we threw out the door. And we went from, 10 industry buckets down to like 6. But when we do restaurant and bar, we've had a few spend some pretty serious money on AV and tech. It's surprising. And I think that is probably because of the cash injection that they had, through grants and PPE and all the other, the SBA, EDIL loans and all that stuff. So they're definitely, people have been cooped up for so long, and the ones that go out to, you see all the sports betting stuff, right? All the commercials and all that kind of stuff. That's big, big money. And we've had a few here in Denver who have really invested a lot of money and done some pretty serious planning, and it's working. They're packed. So, they put in a $250,000 video wall and video distribution and audio and, put the whole place on a schedule, on-off schedule, do seasonal events and promotions and all that. And that's been really good. As far as retail for us, Ian, we're not really big into retail. So I would probably want somebody else to speak to that.
Got it. Yeah. And, that's something that I even noticed when I, years ago, I was working on a large restaurant chain in the Midwest region. And it was interesting because depending on the franchise owner, was really dependent on if they felt like the investment in the technology was worth it, because it was the same restaurant brand, but different franchise owners. One would spend almost nothing, and then another one would just go all out and put in, over 100 TVs and video distribution. And we did notice not really the customer making a huge choice on, I'm going to go to this one versus that one, but definitely the staff saving a lot of time on setting up, scenes and with the distribution and turning things on and off. So I know it was an investment that the owners saw that it was a good time investment on their end. So,
and real quick injection too is, our support contracts with these places are just for one location, $1,000 a month. But when they host a big game or a big event and they're selling $10,000 or $15,000 an hour in alcohol and food, if the system's down, that support and immediate responses, that SLA is really, really important. So we've definitely seen that, and we've been leaning on that and trying to push that more and more. And it's creating value for them and value for us.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up to make sure that people listening to this understand that the RMR, service contracts are not just for residential, that there's lots of opportunities for the commercial space to make some good recurring revenue, but and also have a really good rapport with your customers. So, houses of worship, and talking about buckets in different areas, houses of worship have really struggled through the pandemic. For a while there were some states where people couldn't congregate, they couldn't have masses. Heather, I'm not sure if you're working on any houses of worship projects, but if you have you noticed any major changes with any of the technology that they're putting in?
So we don't consider House of Worship one of our silos. However, Video is, video conferencing is, streaming is, and lo and behold, guess what they're all doing the last 18 months is streaming, recording, capturing. So we have started to do some more house of worship than we had before previously, because they understand it's an AV shop, not just their hired on, tech guy that runs the show at church on Sundays. They're realizing that they need to capture, so that not just mass too, but they're seeing beyond just capturing mass that, so and so can't come to a funeral, so we want to be able to show that. Or some family might not be able to make it for a wedding, and we want to be able to show that. So it's something that it hasn't necessarily been one of our silos that we've gone after in the past, but we are entertaining more and doing some more work with them now that has really become a piece of the story.
That's great. Yeah, I know there's some very, very large houses of worship that have broadcast capabilities and always have, but I've seen a lot of the smaller ones that really didn't invest in much technology outside of a good sound system. So it's good to hear that they're trying to find ways to connect with their congregation. So
and
yeah,
meanwhile,
absolutely.
you have someone who's just Facebook living it with their iPhone.
Nice. So this one's for everyone, and we, I think all three of you kind of touched on this a little bit, and so I'll make a rounds with you all. But with nearly a third of employees moving to remote or hybrid working conditions, what changes? If any, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to let each one of you touch on it. Do you see, the corporate environments doing to support this? Is that upgrading all of their conference rooms that necessary, like maybe a huddle space that was just for a quick standing session now needs to have some remote access capability or some conference capability? Are you noticing these large upgrades? And I think we all touched on that, but Shawn, can you kind of touch on where you're seeing some of that happen?
Yeah, what we're seeing is the traditional town hall meeting space, right? Get all the employees, someone in the management team, is conveying either a monthly, quarterly, or yearly big message, or even just basic company messaging, and meeting spaces are now definitely hybrid. So some in-person, limited capacity with a bunch of remote. So, multiple camera locations, streaming capabilities. But the trick with that is, us as a company, I'm sure you guys too, is we've really tried to make it easy for the IT and AV people, which even larger corporations, they don't have an AV person. So we really want, one-touch meetings, easy deploy, easy run, basically a button that starts the meeting. And there's just really, 2 to 4 presets for room configurations and camera angles. So we've been doing a lot of that. And once you do a few and you kind of get the rhythm going and learn what people use and what they don't use, that's been a really good sales point for us. So, we'll do 200 person meeting space, but it's definitely configured to be streaming and broadcasting on the fly. So, someone's not back at a mixing board and has cameras, and then you have another guy standing over here with cameras. So all the IP PTZ cameras are awesome. I mean, the price point of those have really come down too, if you can get them. But that's been really, really popular. And then we're also doing a lot of go backs. So we go back to older spaces that we did 2 or 3 years ago, city and county spaces, meeting spaces, and then we'll add the camera configurations and streaming capabilities to their existing system.
Heather, how about yourself? Have you noticed pretty much similar?
Absolutely, yeah. So we just did, there's a design that was done in 2019 for a national headquarters of a bank, a smaller bank here in Western New York. And that install was held because everybody went remote. So even though the building had finished, the install was held for months and months and months. So we finally went back and we installed it. And the questions that we were getting at that time, there was 2 rooms, the boardroom and there was a training room, that were the only 2 that had, I take that back. The boardroom was the only room that had video conference capability. And we did multiple trainings for them. So and every time we did the training, where's the video conferencing? Well, this was designed in 2019. You weren't going to let anybody go remote. And now we have a change order in, or a quote back into them for about 23 additional rooms to add on video conferencing. So again, I feel like what the corporate is just starting to understand is that this isn't a change. This isn't we're going to go back to the way we were. This is a cultural shift. And so now I think that anyone who's doing it today is now looking at it as it has to have that video conferencing capability, because I will always, from now on, have some people remote. And so we talk a lot when we are selling to them about collaboration. It's not just to have a meeting so I can be a talking head to all of you beautiful people. It's that we're going to be in here, like we're together, and we're going to collaborate as if we are in the same room. So that's really, I think, what starts to change the story and for them to understand it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely, because it's not just about connecting up on a Zoom call and everyone talking. Are you noticing any new? This is just a side question. Are you noticing any new technologies that are allowing more that collaboration more than just the video, where you can take notes digitally and kind of like? Are you seeing some new things come out that are supporting that?
We are. So I mentioned the beamforming microphone before. That's a game changer because anyone can talk anywhere in a room. You can have Quiet Bob next to you and he will be heard. But now what we realized in doing this over and over and over again is the first conversation we have to have before we put together the quote is, this is a piece of culture as well, because if two people are chatting in the back, that microphone's going to pick them up as well. So you can't have a lot of that cross chatter. The cameras that have gone from just, so we used to have basic cameras, PTZs, and now to have smart framing cameras, that's made a really big difference because, again, someone's not working the show, going up there. And then whiteboarding, I think, is getting better. Hudley came out with, was it the Canvas that it was called, where you could point the camera on the dry erase board? Crush Run used to have one that was called the Airboard. And so that if you have the CEO who's maybe 60 plus and is like, son of a bitch, like I am going to write on this dry erase board and I want everyone to see it. So to have that camera that's on there capturing what he's writing and getting rid of the back of his body, that's good but not great technology yet. But so we are starting to see some of these things to allow you to collaborate as if everyone's in the room, but using technology to do it.
And also what I'm hearing is it used to be there, it was pretty, you could get pretty cookie cutter in commercial environments. And it sounds like there's now a really good need for good client discovery conversations to really figure out how the culture of the company and how these rooms can help that culture thrive and help everyone work better together.
I've gotten lots of clients because I have other AV companies that have not done that. So yes, you're absolutely right. What's the pain point that we're trying to solve? And I think it was Trent who said earlier, we cannot talk about products. This is cross from residential to commercial. We have to talk about solutions. So it's not just, hey, I can go to Amazon and get this 5 cents cheaper, $5 cheaper. It's here's a complete solution for you in the way that you use it. But if you don't have that conversation, they won't, even if it's the easiest thing to do, they won't use it because you're not solving the problem they came to you with.
Yep. Trent, what are you seeing as far as the upgrades to the rooms and a little twist, because I want to pick on your experience with MDUs. Are you noticing any changes in some of the MDU projects to support the remote working?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So forgive me if it's a long-winded answer, but I'm going to put you on the spot here for a second, Ian. So I think the conversations we're having specific, I'll go back to the MDU side, is interesting. So you've got the consumer side of things, and then you've got the WeWork type atmosphere type things where you have a lot of this shared kind of co-working spaces that we're dealing with. So my question to you is, what type of device do you own? It doesn't really matter what the answer to the question is, but hear me out.
I'm an Apple person.
So when you bought your Apple device, my question for you is did you open the instruction booklet and read the pages and pages of how to use your device?
No, but when there are firmware updates, I read the firmware release.
Fair enough. But when you opened it up for the first time, you didn't take the instruction booklet out. So
nope.
So what we're seeing is the expectation because of this pandemic, the expectations from consumers really drive different outcomes inside these types of meeting rooms now. And so I can think of at least 7 room types that we see on a consistent basis, from boardrooms to training rooms to large, medium, small conference rooms to huddle rooms to, I think I covered all 7, I think. And so the instruction booklet of how to start this room and that little 1-pager on the table is no longer acceptable to someone who can start a FaceTime conversation with their grandchild who may be somewhere in their 50s to 80s because it's that simple to use. Yet, for some reason in the AV world, we still come across it because we do some go back work. I think Shawn had mentioned that earlier, or you, Heather. For some reason, it's still, I feel like, is accepted. What we've said is we've challenged our team to say, look, if this room, regardless if it's a training room or a boardroom, doesn't start in 2 minutes or less, you have failed. Period. It doesn't matter what name is on the box, the technology, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's been our challenge to our programmers. I think on that side of it, they've spent most of their career making this GUI look sexy. And I think that's great, but if it's too complicated, as we've seen, we've had those types of conversations. It's got to be easy. And so, what does that mean? If it's easier, like I said, for us to use as consumers, it's got to be that easy. So that's kind of where we start. From there, we're also mindful of the different generations in the workforce now, right? We've got 5 gens in the workforce, and something that's easy or what a Gen Z employee expects might be way different than someone in their 70 or 80-year-old attorney. And I was picking on one of our attorneys the other day over this. So and that's okay. Workspace might be different, but also how they use technology is also going to be different. So you asked the question to Heather about are there so I think we start there from an experience perspective, and we talk about how we level set and how we look at a baseline. Then we ask about, you asked a question to Heather about any new technologies that are allowing, those teams to be more collaborative. I think it's interesting. I think, Heather hit on some great ones about some of the whiteboards and some of the digital boards, if you will. We're still seeing a little bit of a gap with that B2C side in corporate America, where you've got Microsoft Teams saying one thing, you've got Cisco Teams doing another, you've got Zoom doing another. And I think there are some third parties out there that are finally allowing us to do some federation of these systems. And I think that's exciting to see. I think we're still kind of watching that unfold. I know those are coming up every day, because especially in these buildings, you've got corporations that have a myriad of systems that they're using, and they're coming home and they're saying, hey, I'm a Zoom shop. You got a guy saying I'm a Microsoft Teams shop. And then you're like, hey, I just want to talk to Ian, Shawn, and Heather and not have any pain, right? So, and have it be seamless. Those conversations are coming up, and I think that the manufacturers are coming up to speed. I know there are some new products out there, but I think for me, I'm watching it unfold. So
that's great. Thank you. So before we get to our last question, I'm gonna break off the script a little bit here, because I have an opportunity to ask a group of great people in the industry, and I'm working on a digital event that is around the topic that I want to ask this question on, which is about wellness in the commercial space. And have you all noticed, especially when you have had a huge workforce that were working completely from home for an extended period of time over the pandemic, that companies are now bringing their employees back into the offices slowly? Have any of you seen any changes to the workspace environment to help employees be a little bit more comfortable, have like any wellness type of technology, and upgrading their, not just the AV and communication, but maybe lighting and shades, sound masking, anything? Have you noticed anything going into some of these spaces that is to help kind of promote people that have been working from home in a great, comfortable environment to come back and have a similar kind of feel? Any changes? And I'll just leave this one open to anyone that wants to answer.
Whoever's selling the air purification systems is making a fortune. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I think employers are becoming more flexible and definitely paying attention to environment and flexible workspace. I know architecture firms, I'm sure Heather and Trent, you're seeing architecture firms are having to re-strategize on the open workspace, shared desks, all that stuff. What do they call it? Hot swapping desks. I probably can't really speak to the environmental stuff except for lighting and shades. It's definitely been big.
Okay.
I'll feed in off of Shawn. We're seeing a lot of the indoor air quality sensors now we're getting a lot of questions around that now for the condos, and even on some of the larger single family homes that we're working on, they're asking a lot of those types of questions. In fact, we've even just said, hey, we're just going to put those in as part of our base package and not even have conversations around it anymore. So that's interesting. Lighting control is still a big one. To Shawn's point, the motorized window treatment is still a big one. I still think this term well is kind of, it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like on the residential side, Ian. I think there's the wellness. I'm not sure if we call it the wellness standard. I forget what we call it on the commercial building side of it, but there's the wellness piece of it, kind of similar to LEED, if you will, where you have points and certification levels. So I'm watching that. It's a great question. It's going to be interesting to watch the next, I think, 2 to 3 years, how things unfold with the manufacturers and see what products they come up with. But no doubt, I mean, heck, there was just an event out in, and I say just, I want to say 6 months ago out in Colorado where the conference, they installed EAQ sensors at the hotel. That was really interesting. And back then they were even experimenting with technologies around touchless elevators where you could kind of do what you did in the airports with your cell phones and kind of wave your device. And that was pretty interesting. I know that's not the question, but
I've seen that one too, and it's super creepy because you get no buttons and you're like, I might never come out ever again. Or you're going to open up and it's going to be Narnia. One of those things might happen. Those are awesome. I can't wait to see. I love, so for me, I really am interested in where this will all go. It's kind of one of my favorite things. I write for a trade publication, so I do some sampling with different wellness devices on the home front, and just how they can improve your quality of life. So it's near and dear to my heart. We're not seeing a huge amount on the commercial market from the technology standpoint yet, but I have noticed that in some of these more boutique businesses, they're being built as places you want to go. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you'd walk in and it's a cubicle farm, and all I think is, man, no matter how bad of a day I'm having, at least I don't work here, right? Like I would think I would wilt. And now I went to a place last week to do an estimate. And when you walked in, they built it to be similar to a place in Ireland they had gone. And there was lots of greenery and there were tiny little nooks. And they had a connection with the Calm app where somebody builds these things called Calm rooms. Maybe the two of you have seen it, or the three of you have seen it, where it's almost like a closet. And you can go in this room and it's a quiet space and you can listen to a meditation. And they have another space that was a quiet room they call the library. And they were looking for room scheduling for that so that only 4 people could be in there at a time. So there is a focus. There's the beginnings, the murmurings of, we spend more time at work than anything else we do in our entire life. And what this pandemic has kind of taught us is, man, we were all robots and really unhappy. So now if they're going to want to draw people back into the market, we need to make our spaces where our employees work a good space. And that's really that silver lining that I hope we take out going forward is, let's make them better, more fun, happier to be, better mental health. Fingers crossed. I hope that we just don't go, we'll just go back.
Right. Absolutely. And so on that note, I have one last question for all three of you. If a primarily residential integrator was interested in getting into some light commercial work or moderate commercial work, and getting into the market, what one piece of advice would you give them? And maybe what would you recommend? How would you recommend maybe them starting out? Like what area? So Heather, thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So my very first piece of information is make sure that your business runs like a business. And I say that with so much love because, as I said, my father started the company, and when there were only 2 or 3 employees, you don't have great processes. Both Trent and Shawn talked about processes early, but the huge piece of the commercial market when you want to get into it is cash flow. Because when you feel like today in the residential market, you're getting paid 25, 50, 75% upfront. In the commercial market, you might get, great, we just pulled in a $100,000 project and it's a PO. And they don't pay until every single product is in their hands. And that is not a fun game, and that will keep you up all night long. So yes, run your business like a business. Don't take on more than you can chew. And one of my favorite pieces of advice that anybody ever gave me was, sometimes the most profitable job you have is the one you say no to.
Absolutely. Trent, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll feed off you. You took the words out of my mouth. I'd say pay attention to your terms and conditions and your supplier agreements. So don't let the big OEMs bull you into the net 30 conversation. I think as small as you are, there are, it's interesting to see what if you have a little bit of creativity, what some of those manufacturers will do for you. So I've always treated every business, and I'm part of a large corporation like I'm a startup, and I've always said, I've always been measured on cash flow and everything like that. So challenge them, get creative with how you buy out things. To Heather's point, GCs often will give you a PO, and you'll have to kind of you'll have some cash outflows, and just again, I always say, the mind's a beautiful thing. Get creative with how you broker these deals. And then if you're going, I think there is a nice thing if you're a residential integrator going to commercial or vice versa. I think on the resi side, B2C, it's okay to ask for a couple dollars down. I mean, that's how you mobilize, right? You'd be surprised. Some design build GCs out there will do something similar. You have to find those niche ones, and I would say they're more the family-oriented GCs. But treat them like you want to be treated, and good things will come. Don't have a broad stroke saying, just because I'm small, they can't help me. So that's what I'll do with.
And Shawn, yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of times residential companies get brought into commercial spaces because they did a C-levels home, or the IT guy has a buddy, that kind of thing. Lean on manufacturers. Most of the manufacturers are so willing to help. They're not looking for a single sale, though, a one-off job. And nothing is more frustrating for us, and I'm sure you guys as well, is to walk into a really nice executive boardroom with a $50,000 conference table, and the IT or the executive is saying, this room just doesn't really do what we want. And you open the door and there's a surround sound receiver in there with a residential product controlling it. Yes, it handles the HDMI switching, but, lean on the manufacturers, make some calls. Call Crestron, Extron, go to Cedia, shoot Cedia a message. Hey, I need some help in this area from this manufacturer. Cedia will be glad to introduce you, and just lean on them for design. I would highly encourage that. And then, of course, training and certifications for your staff. The only way we were successful starting out in commercial in 2008 was I purposely changed some of our staff over to just commercial people. That's all they did all day long for many years, and I would not have been successful without it, because you can't guess, because you're not going to get paid, just like Heather said.
Yep. And on that note, we'll end that. No, it's great.
Wait, was that positive or negative? We should end on a positive note.
No, I think all three of you gave perfect points. The relying on manufacturers is absolutely true. Education, certification, and absolutely,
people want to help. People want to help.
Yeah.
Other integrators call me. I'm sure they call you. Like, hey, I have this job and I don't know what to do. I've never done a video wall before. Pick up the phone and call us, or connect with us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll throw a number out there. It's hot right now for us, Ian and Shawn and Heather. I don't know about for you all, but the storing, when you're buying out material, especially these days, right? The commodities are wild. You want to buy out early because you don't know if next week they're going up 20%. So, where can you store materials? We're not a storage house. We don't have warehouses all over the country. So we have to get, again, I'll use that creativity side of it and ask either Crestron or Lutron or whomever for some, where can we do this? And they're pointing us to third parties. And so again, just don't be afraid to ask, right? Because it's all about controlling costs and profitability, right? So,
absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing discussion with all three of you. I can't thank you enough. I'm so sad that we weren't able to do this in person in Indianapolis, but hopefully we'll be able to do something similar next year at Expo in Dallas. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Shawn, and thank you, Trent, very much for your time and for being here. If you need more information, go to cda.net. If you're looking for Expo next year, cdaexpo.com. And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian.